She knew what she wanted but never dared. Until him. Part 1. The Quiet Want. She had always known what she wanted. It wasn't the kind of thing you could explain at brunch, or squeeze into a dating app bio. Not just sex. Not just love. Something between the two. But deeper, intimate. Soulful. Slow like honey poured over warm bread. A relationship where someone could read her body like a letter she'd never dared to send. But she'd never gone hunting for it. Alina was 33 now. A content editor by day, a daydreamer by night. She lived in a small apartment in a historic European city where the streets echoed in the rain and the cafes stayed open until midnight. Her life was lovely, safe, predictable. And yet, under that lovely life, pulsed something else, a hunger she had never dared to feed. She had imagined it just once. Years ago. A moment, not even an event. A stranger at a jazz bar, a glance that lingered too long. She remembered his voice low, textured. He had leaned in, asked if the seat was taken. Her breath had caught, but she'd shaken her head no. And he'd sat beside her, his presence impossibly calm. They'd talked about music, about books, about nothing. And for a few glorious minutes, she imagined what it might be like to be touched by someone who saw her not just her body, but her quiet longing. But she'd left that night untouched. That was how Alina lived, by imagining, by not acting. Until this spring. Part 2. The man with the candle eyes. He was not like the others. His name was Mark. Half French, half Italian, a photographer who taught part-time and travelled, with a camera slung over his shoulder like a worn-out guitar. She met him at a dinner party, hosted by her colleague, an intimate gathering of artists, writers, misfits. He wasn't conventionally attractive, not the kind of man who turned heads across a room, but he had those eyes, candlelit, slow-burning, as if he held a story in his gaze, and would only share it if you asked with the right silence. They spoke over red wine and olives, about light, about memory, about desire not explicitly, but in metaphors. At one point he asked, "Do you ever feel like there's a part of you that's never been touched?" Alina's breath caught in her throat. She nodded slowly. "I've always known the way I want, but I've never done the hunt." He tilted his head. "What's stopping you?" She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "I don't think I've found someone who could meet me there." He didn't press, just held her gaze until someone called his name. But that night she lay awake, imagining again. And for the first time in years, she wanted to do more than imagine. Part 3. A gentle beginning. They didn't rush. That was the first thing she liked. Mark didn't text her 3 times a day. He didn't play games. He simply existed in her world like a steady, a soft jazz record left playing in another room. They went for walks. No declarations. No bold flirtations. Just conversation. He'd take photos of her hands without asking. Once, he whispered, "You carry quiet like velvet." She didn't know how to respond, so she said nothing. But she remembered it. She felt it. Weeks passed. Spring warmed into something lush. They met one evening at a bookstore. She'd worn a dress without thinking much of it long. Wine-coloured, bare at the shoulders. When he saw her, he didn't comment. Just looked at her like she was something sacred. They had dinner, candlelight, wine. He didn't ask to kiss her. He waited. And it was she who leaned forward on the stone steps outside his building, brushing her lips softly against his. She wasn't trembling, not exactly. But something deep in her had begun to crack open. Part 4. The chance. They didn't go to bed that night. But the next time, she invited him in. Her apartment was quiet. Incense curled like secrets in the air. The lights were low. He took off his shoes at the door, instinctively respectful. "Tea?" she asked, nervous. He stepped behind her. "Close but not touching. Only if you'll sit with me." So she did. They didn't speak for a while. Just sat cross-legged on the couch, their knees barely grazing. He watched her like he was memorizing her. "I don't want to go fast," she said, voice barely audible. He nodded. "I never expected you to." She swallowed, her chest tightening. "It's not that I've never been with someone. It's just, I've never been with someone the way I need." He reached out, gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "What way is that?" She looked at him, really looked, and felt her heart bloom. "I want to be seen. Slowly. Like I'm more than skin." Part 5, the unveiling. They didn't move to the bed right away. Instead, he asked if he could take her picture. She nodded. He didn't lift the camera, just stared. "This is the one," he whispered. "The one I'll keep in my memory." And then he kissed her, not hungrily, not urgently, but like she was something rare. When they finally moved to the bedroom, it wasn't about mechanics. It wasn't about conquest. It was about listening. Mark touched her like a reader turning pages slowly, reverently. His hands asked questions her breath answered. When he unzipped her dress, he didn't stare. He just kissed her shoulder like a prayer. And when she stood before him, there was no judgment. No rush. He whispered, "May I?" And she said, "Yes." She had imagined this moment for years. And now, living it felt both foreign and familiar, like coming home to a house she'd only seen in dreams. Part 6, the deep ache. When he entered her, it wasn't like the novels. There was no explosion, no symphony. There was presence. Raw, trembling, beautiful presence. They moved together like dancers who'd only just discovered rhythm. Not perfect, but real. She cried softly, not from pain, but from recognition. Mark didn't panic. He held her face in his hands. "Too much?" he whispered. She shook her head. "No, just enough." And when the final wave passed, and they lay breathless, tangled, she felt something she'd never felt before. Satisfaction. Not just of the body, but of the soul. Part 7, after the storm. They didn't speak for a long time. She traced circles on his chest. He kissed her hair. "You're quiet," he said. "I'm overwhelmed." He smiled gently. "Good?" She nodded. "Yes, it's just, I've waited a long time for this." He brushed her thigh with his fingers. "For me?" She laughed softly. "For me." He understood. That night he didn't leave. They fell asleep entwined, limbs and hearts unsure where one ended and the other began. In the morning, she woke to find him watching her. "Stay?" she whispered. He nodded. "Always. As long as you let me come slow." Part 8, the new kind of want. Weeks passed. They explored more, not just bodies, but selves. Their silences became sacred. Their laughter felt like music only they could hear. She told him about her poetry. He read it like scripture. He told her about his past. She listened without fixing, just holding. And in the small rituals, making breakfast, slow dances in the kitchen, kisses placed on collarbones, she learned what it meant to be wanted in the way she wants. Not just taken, not just held, but met. Part 9, becoming. Alina changed. Not loudly, but her eyes held more light, her voice more command, her shoulders less weight. She no longer lived for imagined moments. She was living them. She wore dresses that made her feel like poetry. She wrote stories that pulsed with heat. And when Mark looked at her, he didn't see a fantasy. He saw her, fully. She had once imagined just once. And now, She had 1,000 moments. Part 10, The Hunt Within. They sat one evening beneath a rust-colored sky, on their favorite bench beside the river. He held her hand. Their fingers fit easily now, as if they'd always been shaped for each other. "I love you," he said. She turned, quiet, eyes soft. "I love me too." He smiled. That's the best answer. And she knew then. She hadn't needed someone to save her, or complete her. She just needed someone to meet her, soul to soul. The chance she once imagined, she had taken, and in doing so, she became the hunter. Of truth, of touch, of self.